The shuttle landed with a soft hum on the black glass surface of the Volanthi Academy. Park Yuna stood up from her seat and took a deep breath. Through the window, she could see the massive towers that reached into the purple sky. This was not Earth. This was not home. This was the most famous military academy in the entire galaxy. She was the only human on board. The year was 2347. Humanity had finally made contact with alien species 50 years ago. They had fought wars. They had signed treaties. They had begged for a place at the table. And now, after decades of proving themselves, Earth had earned the right to send one student to the Volanthi Academy. That student was Yuna. She picked up her small bag and walked toward the exit. The other passengers, tall beings with blue skin and 4 arms, small creatures covered in golden fur, and things she could not even describe, all moved away from her. Some looked at her with curiosity. Most looked at her with disgust. Humans were new to the galaxy. And new meant weak. New meant primitive. New meant nothing. Yuna did not care about their looks. She had a job to do. The doors opened, and she stepped onto the platform. The air was thin and cold. It smelled like metal and something sweet she could not name. Before her stood a creature that made her stop in her tracks. The Volanthi were beautiful in a terrifying way. They stood 8 feet tall with skin like white marble. Their eyes were completely black, like pools of ink. They had no hair, no ears that she could see. Their mouths were small, and their voices came out like music. But Yuna knew the truth about them. The Volanthi were telepaths. They could read minds. They could push thoughts into your head. They could make you see things that were not there. And they had been doing this for thousands of years. The Volanthi standing before her wore long silver robes. She looked at Yuna the way a person might look at an insect. "You are the human," the Volanthi said. It was not a question. "Yes," Yuna replied. "I am Park Yuna, representing Earth. I am Administrator Kel. You will follow me." Kel turned and walked away without waiting. Yuna followed. They passed through long hallways made of the same black glass. Students of dozens of species walked past them. Some were clearly soldiers. Others looked like scholars. All of them stopped to stare at Yuna. She heard whispers in languages she did not understand. She felt their eyes on her back. She kept walking. Kel led her to a large room filled with about 40 students. They sat on floating chairs arranged in a circle. In the center stood another Volanthi, older than Kel, with deep lines on her white face. Her black eyes seemed to look everywhere at once. "This is your class," Kel said. "This is your instructor, Thalvera. She will decide if you are worthy of this academy." Kel paused and looked at Yuna with something like pity. "Good luck, human. You will need it." Then Kel was gone. Yuna found an empty chair and sat down. The other students did not greet her. A large creature with scales and 6 eyes moved his chair away from her. A being made of what looked like living light flickered nervously when she got close. Thalvera watched all of this with a small smile. "Welcome to my class," Thalvera said. Her voice was soft, but it filled the entire room. "Some of you come from great empires. Some of you come from warrior races that have conquered star systems. Some of you are the children of kings and generals." She paused and looked directly at Yuna. "And one of you is human." A few students laughed. Yuna kept her face calm. "I have been teaching at this academy for 3,000 years, Thalvera continued. "In that time, I have trained the greatest military minds in the galaxy. I have also removed those who do not belong. My job is not to make you comfortable. My job is to find your weaknesses and destroy them. If you survive, you will be stronger. If you do not survive," she smiled again, "then you did not deserve to be here in the first place." Thalvera began to walk around the circle, stopping at each student. She would look at them, tilt her head, and then move on. Sometimes she would say something quietly that made the student go pale. Other times she would simply nod. When she reached Yuna, she stopped. "Bark Yuna," Talvera said. 26 years old. Born in a city called Seoul on a planet called Earth. Lost your brother in a shuttle accident when you were 19. Lost your mother to illness 2 years later. No father on record. Yuna felt her heart beat faster. She had not told anyone these things. The Volanti was reading her mind. "You carry much pain for such a young creature," Talvera said. "Humans are emotional beings. You feel everything so deeply. It is your greatest weakness. It is also our greatest strength," Yuna said quietly. The room went silent. No one spoke to Talvera like that. The old Volanti's black eyes seemed to shine. "Is that so? We shall see, little human. We shall see." She moved on to the next student. After the first class ended, Yuna returned to her small room. It was barely bigger than a closet. A bed, a desk, a window looking out at the alien sky. She sat on the bed and finally let herself feel the exhaustion. She was so far from home. She was surrounded by beings who hated her or pitied her. Her instructor could read her every thought and planned to use them against her. But she could not fail. She would not fail. Yuna thought about her brother, Doan. He had always believed in her. Even when she failed her first pilot exam. Even when she was rejected from the space program 3 times. He had always said the same thing. "You are stronger than you know." He had died believing in her. She would not let him down. She thought about her mother, who had worked 2 jobs to pay for Yuna's education, who had never complained even when she was sick, who had smiled at her from the hospital bed and said, "Make me proud." Yuna wiped a tear from her eye. "I will," she whispered to the empty room. "I promise." The next morning, she woke up before everyone else. She exercised in her tiny room. She reviewed the class materials. She prepared herself for whatever Talvera had planned. When she walked into the classroom, Talvera was already there. "You are early, human." "Yes. Why?" Yuna looked at her instructor. "Because I am here to learn. And I will not waste a single moment." Talvera studied her for a long moment. Then she did something Yuna did not expect. She laughed. "Interesting," Talvera said. "Most students spend their first night crying. Some try to leave. But you came early. Perhaps you will provide some entertainment before you break." "I will not break," Yuna said. Talvera's smile faded. Her black eyes turned cold. "Every student says that. Every single one. And I have broken them all." She leaned closer. "You will be no different, little human. I will find what hurts you most. And I will use it until you shatter." Yuna met her gaze without looking away. "You can try." The other students began to arrive. The day's lessons would begin soon. But something had changed in that quiet moment before class. A challenge had been made. Teacher against student. Mind against heart. 3,000 years of experience against 26 years of human. Stubbornness. The game had begun. 3 days had passed since Yuna arrived at the Volanti Academy. 3 days of lessons, exercises, and silent judgment. 3 days of watching Talvera work. The old Volanti did not teach like normal teachers. She did not stand at the front of the room and lecture. She did not give assignments or tests. Instead, she played games. Terrible games that left students broken and crying. On the first day, she called forward a student named Rix. He was a Karathi prince, the son of one of the most powerful rulers in the galaxy. His people were known for their pride and honor. They never showed weakness. Talvera made him stand in the center of the room. "Tell me, Prince Rix," she said softly, "do you love your father?" Rix stood tall. "Of course. He's the greatest king our people have ever known." "Is he?" Talvera tilted her head. Then why does he send you here? Why does he not keep you at home to learn from him directly? Because this academy is the best. No. Thalvera's voice cut through his words. He sends you here because he is disappointed in you. He sends you here because your younger brother shows more promise. He sends you here because he hopes you will become something he can be proud of. But deep down, he doubts you ever will. Rix's face turned pale. That is not true, is it not? Thalvera smiled. I can see it in your mind, young prince. The memory of your father looking at your brother with love. The memory of him looking at you with... what was it? Ah, yes. Tolerance. He tolerates you because you are his firstborn. But he does not believe in you. The room was completely silent. Rix's hands began to shake. His eyes grew wet. And then, to everyone's shock, the proud Karathi prince began to cry. You may sit down, Thalvera said. Lesson 1. Your enemies will always find your weakness. If a few words from an old teacher can break you, what will you do when you face a real enemy? Yuna watched from her seat. She understood now what kind of place this was. This was not a school. This was a battlefield of the mind. On the second day, Thalvera chose a Draxian warrior named Vera. The Draxians were famous for their courage. They were born fighters who never ran from battle. Vera had fought in 3 wars before coming to the academy. She had medals and scars to prove her bravery. Thalvera put her in a simulation. It looked real, completely real. Vera stood in a burning city with enemies all around her. Fight, Thalvera commanded. Vera fought. She was incredible. Fast and deadly and fearless. She cut down enemy after enemy. But then Thalvera changed the simulation. Suddenly, the enemies were not strangers. They were Vera's family. Her mother. Her sisters. Her children. Vera froze. What is wrong, warrior? Thalvera asked. They are your enemies now. Kill them? I cannot. You must. In war, there are no exceptions. Kill them, or they will kill you. The fake family moved closer. They raised weapons. They screamed at Vera to die. Vera dropped her weapon and fell to her knees. The simulation ended. The room returned to normal. But Vera remained on the floor, shaking and crying. Lesson 2. Thalvera said to the class. Courage means nothing if it can be turned against you. Know what you fear, or your enemy will use it to destroy you. Vera quit the academy that night. She packed her things and left on the first shuttle. When Yuna passed her in the hallway, the mighty warrior could not even look her in the eyes. By the 3rd day, half the class was terrified. Students avoided Thalvera's gaze. They sat as still as possible, hoping not to be noticed. Some had already sent messages home, begging to be allowed to leave. And then Thalvera called Yuna's name. Human, come to the center. Yuna stood up and walked to the middle of the room. She could feel every eye on her. Some students looked curious. Most looked relieved that it was not them. Thalvera circled around her slowly. I have been waiting for this, Biovelanti said. I have broken princes and warriors. But a human? This is new. This is interesting. I am ready, Yuna said. Are you? Thalvera stopped in front of her. Let us see. Without warning, images flooded Yuna's mind. But these were not just images. They felt real. She was no longer in the classroom. She was somewhere else entirely. She was standing in a hospital room. Her brother Dowan was lying in a bed, covered in bandages. The shuttle crash had been terrible. His body was broken. Machines beeped around him, fighting to keep him alive. Yuna's younger self stood beside the bed, holding his hand. Stay with me, young Yuna begged. Please, stay with me. Dowan looked at her with tired eyes. He tried to smile. I am proud of you, he whispered. Always proud. And then the machines went silent. The line went flat. Her brother was gone. Yuna gasped. She was back in the classroom, but her eyes were wet with tears. The memory was so real. The pain was so fresh. It felt like losing him all over again. Talvera smiled. Ah, there it is. The grief. It is still so raw, even after all these years. The images continued. Now Yuna was at her mother's funeral. It was raining. She stood alone by the grave because there was no one else. No family left. No close friends. Just her and the rain and the endless grief. So alone, Thalvira whispered. So terribly alone. How does it feel, little human? To lose everyone you love? To have no one left? Yuna's hands trembled. Her chest felt tight. She wanted to scream. She wanted to run, but she did not. She took a deep breath and forced herself to stand straight. Thalvira looked surprised. You resist? Interesting. Let me try harder. More images came. Yuna saw herself as a child, being told she was not smart enough. She saw herself failing exams, being rejected from programs, being told she would never amount to anything. She saw every moment of doubt, every moment of weakness, every time she had wanted to give up. And through it all, she heard Thalvira's voice in her head. You are nothing. You are a primitive creature from a primitive world. Your species is young and foolish. You do not belong here. You will never belong anywhere. Yuna closed her eyes. She thought about her brother's smile. She thought about her mother's strength. She thought about every human who had ever suffered and still kept going. She opened her eyes and looked directly at Thalvira. Is that all? She asked quietly. The room went completely silent. Thalvira stared at her. For a moment, something flickered in those black eyes. Was it surprise? Confusion? Yuna could not tell. You should be on your knees, Thalvira said. You should be begging me to stop. Why? Yuna asked. Because you showed me my pain? I already know my pain. I carry it with me every day. It is part of who I am. Then it makes you weak. No, Yuna shook her head. It makes me strong. Because I have survived it. I have lived through it. And I am still standing here. Thalvira studied her for a long moment. The other students watched in amazement. No one had ever spoken to the instructor like this. No one had ever refused to break. Sit down, human, Thalvira finally said. We are not finished with you. Not by far. Yuna returned to her seat. Her heart was still racing. Her hands were still shaking. But she had not broken. She had not run. That night, alone in her room, Yuna finally let herself cry. She cried for her brother. She cried for her mother. She cried for the home she might never see again. But when she was done, she washed her face and sat at her desk. Tomorrow, Thalvira would try again. And the day after that. And the day after that, it did not matter. Yuna had been through worse. Every human had been through worse. They were a species born from struggle, shaped by loss, strengthened by suffering. Thalvira could play her games. She could dig through minds and find painful memories. But she would never understand the simple truth that every human knew from birth. Pain does not destroy you. It teaches you. And those lessons last forever. Yuna looked out her window at the alien stars. I am still here, she whispered. And I will not quit. Somewhere in the academy, Thalvira sat alone in her chambers. For the first time in many years, she felt something she did not expect. She felt curious. The human had not broken. Why? She would find out. No matter how long it took, 6 weeks had passed at the Volanti Academy. The class that had started with 40 students was now down to 23. Some had quit. Some had been removed. Some had simply disappeared in the night, unable to face another day. The park Una was still there. Every day, Thalvira found new ways to attack her mind. She showed Una visions of failure. She whispered doubts into her thoughts during lessons. She made her relive her worst memories again and again. And every day, Una refused to break. She studied harder than anyone else. She trained longer than anyone else. She arrived first and left last. When other students gave up, she pushed forward. When Thalvira mocked her, she stayed silent and kept working. The other students began to notice. A young being named Tal, who was made of living crystal, approached her one evening in the dining hall. "How do you do it?" Tal asked. "How do you survive her attacks?" Una looked up from her meal. "I do not survive them. I accept them. I do not understand. Thalvira shows me painful things. But those things already happened. They are already part of me. She cannot hurt me with memories because I have already lived through them. The past only has power if you run from it." Tal sat down across from her. "My people do not experience pain the way you do. But I have seen what she does to others. It is cruel. It is training," Una said. "Cruel, yes. But there is truth in it. If we cannot face our own minds, how can we face an enemy?" Tal thought about this for a moment. "You are strange, human. But I think I am beginning to understand why your species survived long enough to reach the stars." That night, something changed. A few other students began sitting with Una at meals. They did not speak much, but they were there. The human was no longer completely alone. Thalvira noticed this too, one evening. After everyone else had left the training hall, the old Volanti appeared behind Una. "You are making friends," Thalvira said. Una continued putting away her equipment. "I am making allies. There is no difference to you humans, is there? You form connections so easily. You trust so quickly. It is foolish, perhaps." Una turned to face her instructor. "Or perhaps it is our greatest advantage. A single human can be defeated. But humans together? We built cities and empires and starships by working together. We survived extinction by helping each other." Thalvira's black eyes narrowed. "Pretty words. But connections can be used against you. The more you care about others, the more ways I have to hurt you." "That is true," Una admitted. "But it also means I have more reasons to fight. More reasons to survive. When I think about giving up, I remember the people I would let down." "Sentiment," Thalvira said with disgust. "Emotion over logic. This is why your species will never truly succeed." Una smiled slightly. "We have been hearing that for a long time. And yet, here I am." Thalvira stepped closer. Her presence filled the room like cold water. "Why do you resist me, little human? I have broken beings who lived for thousands of years. I have shattered minds that were supposed to be unbreakable. What makes you so special?" Una thought about the question. She thought about everything she had experienced. Everything her species had experienced. And she gave the only answer that was true. "Because you do not understand what you are dealing with." Thalvira's expression did not change. "Explain. You think pain is a weapon. You think trauma makes us weak. You believe that by showing us our worst moments, you can control us." Una shook her head. "But humans are different. We are made from pain. We are built from loss." She stepped closer to her instructor. For once, she was not afraid. "My species survived an ice age. Do you know what that means? For thousands of years, my ancestors lived in a frozen world with nothing but rocks and fire. They watched their children freeze to death. They starved through winters that lasted forever. And still, they kept going." Thalvira said nothing. "We crawled out of extinction events that killed nearly everything on our planet. We survived plagues that wiped out half our population. We fought world wars that destroyed entire cities killed millions of people, left nothing but ash and bones. Yuna's voice did not rise. It did not need to. My grandmother lived through a war. She told me stories about hiding in basements while bombs fell, about eating grass because there was no food, about burying her parents in a field because there was no one left to help. And do you know what she did after the war ended? What? She planted a garden. She got married. She had children. She laughed and loved and lived until she was 93 years old. Because that is what humans do. We survive. We heal. We keep going. Yuna looked directly into Thalvira's black eyes. You have spent 3,000 years teaching at this academy. I have spent 26 years being human. That means I have 26 years of practice carrying pain. 26 years of learning how to fall and get back up. 26 years of training that you cannot even imagine. She paused. And I promise you, there is nothing you can show me that my ancestors have not already survived. The training hall was completely silent. Somewhere outside, alien birds called to each other. The purple sun was setting through the windows. Thal (vir) A stood very still. Her face showed no emotion. But something had shifted in those ancient eyes. Something Yuna had never seen before. Doubt. You are different, Thalvira finally said. I will give you that. But being able to endure pain does not make you strong. It just makes you stubborn. Maybe, Yuna said. But stubborn is enough. Stubborn kept us alive when everything else tried to kill us. Stubborn built the ships that brought us to your stars. Stubborn put me in this academy, in this room, standing in front of you. She picked up her bag and walked toward the door. You can keep trying to break me. That is your job. But I want you to understand something. She stopped at the doorway and looked back. I am not special. I am not the strongest or smartest human. I am just average. And if I can stand here after everything you have done, imagine what the rest of my species can do. Then she was gone, leaving Thalvira alone in the empty training hall. For a long time, the old Volanthi did not move. She stood in the silence and thought about what the human had said. 3,000 years. That was how long she had been teaching. In all that time, she had never met a student like this. Never met a species like this. The Volanthi were ancient. They had perfected their minds over millions of years. They had learned to remove emotion, to think purely in logic, to be above the chaos of feeling. But these humans, they were the opposite. They felt everything. They carried their pain like a badge of honor. They loved and lost and grieved and still somehow found reasons to keep going. It was illogical. It was inefficient. It should have made them weak. So why was this human girl still standing when so many others had fallen? Thalvira did not have an answer. And that bothered her more than she wanted to admit. She left the training hall and returned to her chambers. But for the first time in many centuries, she could not meditate. Her mind kept returning to the human's words. There is nothing you can show me that my ancestors have not already survived. What kind of species was this? What kind of creatures could turn suffering into strength? Thalvira did not know. But she was determined to find out. The game was far from over. But something had changed. For the first time, Thalvira was not certain she would win. The final examination was legendary. Every student at the Volanthi Academy knew about it. Every student feared it. It was called the joining. During the joining, a student and instructor would connect their minds completely. No barriers. No walls. No hiding. Both would see everything the other had ever experienced. Every memory, every emotion, every secret. Most students who attempted the joining with Thalvira failed. Their minds could not handle what she showed them. They would emerge broken, sometimes permanently damaged. Some never recovered at all, but there was no choice. To graduate from the academy, you had to survive the joining. On the day of her examination, Yuna woke before sunrise. She sat in her small room and meditated, just as she had learned during her training. She thought about her brother. She thought about her mother. She thought about Earth and all the people who were counting on her. Then she went to meet Thalvira. The examination room was deep underground. It was a perfect sphere made of smooth black stone. There were no lights, but somehow she could see. The walls seemed to absorb sound, creating a silence so deep it was almost painful. Thalvira waited in the center of the room. She wore white robes instead of her usual silver. Her black eyes reflected nothing. "You came," she said. "Did you expect me to run?" Many do. Even at this final moment, many choose to fail rather than face the joining. Yuna walked forward until she stood directly in front of her instructor. "I am not running." "Then sit." They both sat on the cold floor, facing each other. The silence pressed against them like water. "The rules are simple," Thalvira said. "I will open my mind to you, and you will open your mind to me. We will see each other completely. If your mind breaks, the joining ends and you fail. If you survive, then I graduate. Then you graduate." Thalvira paused. "But I should warn you. Many students think they are ready. They are not. The joining is not like my previous attacks. This is total. There is nowhere to hide. I understand. Do you?" Thalvira leaned forward. "I have 3,000 years of memories. 3,000 years of knowledge. 3,000 years of experiences that your young mind cannot comprehend. When our minds connect, you will feel all of it. And you will feel all of mine," Yuna said quietly. Something flickered in Thalvira's eyes. "Your 26 years against my 3,000? That hardly seemed fair. Then let us begin and find out." Thalvira extended her hands. Yuna took them. The old Valante's skin was cold, like touching marble. "Close your eyes," Thalvira whispered. "And let go." Yuna closed her eyes. She felt the connection begin. At first, it was gentle. A soft touch against her thoughts. Then it grew stronger. She felt Thalvira's mind pressing against hers, searching for a way in. She did not resist. Instead, she did something unexpected. She opened her mind completely. No barriers. No walls. No hiding. She showed Thalvira everything. The Valante's mind rushed into hers like a flood. Yuna saw memories that were not her own. She saw Thalvira as a young student, learning the ways of her people. She saw wars fought across star systems. She saw civilizations rise and fall. But she also saw something else. Something Thalvira kept hidden. Loneliness. The Valante had lived for 3,000 years, but she had lived them alone. Her people valued logic above all else. They had removed emotion from their lives like cutting out a disease. They did not love. They did not grieve. They did not connect. Thalvira had not been touched with kindness in over 2,000 years. She had not laughed with a friend. She had not cried for anyone. She had not felt anything at all. Yuna felt the emptiness of it. The vast, terrible emptiness. But Thalvira was also seeing Yuna's mind. And what she found there shocked her. She saw a young girl holding her brother's hand as he died. She felt the grief so raw and deep that it took her breath away. She saw a daughter burying her mother in the rain, completely alone. She felt loneliness that matched her own. But that was not all. She saw the same girl laughing with friends at school, playing games with her brother when they were children, hugging her mother before leaving for the academy. She felt joy and love and hope, emotions that burned like fire in her cold mind. And then she saw something greater, something she had not expected. She saw humanity. Yuna did not just show her own memories. She showed the memories of her species, passed down through stories, through culture, Through DNA, the collective experience of billions of humans across thousands of years, Thalvira saw wars. Terrible wars that killed millions. She saw bombs falling on cities, children crying in rubble, soldiers dying in mud and blood. But she also saw what came after. She saw mothers holding newborn babies. She saw farmers planting seeds in burned fields. She saw people rebuilding cities with their bare hands. She saw hope rising from ashes. She saw the ice ages that nearly killed everyone. Families huddled in caves, fighting to survive. And she saw them emerge into spring, thin and weak but alive. She saw plagues sweeping across continents, bodies piled in streets, fear and death everywhere. And she saw doctors working through the night, nurses holding hands of the dying, scientists fighting to find cures. She saw it all. The terrible beauty of human existence. The endless cycle of suffering and survival. The stubborn refusal to give up even when giving up made more sense. How? Thalvira whispered through the connection. How do you carry all of this? Because we have to, Una replied. Because there is no other choice. Because giving up means the end of everything we love. It should break you. It should drive you mad. It does, sometimes. But then we wake up the next morning and keep going anyway. Thalvira tried to pull back, to close the connection, but Una held on. Now let me show you something else, Una said. Let me show you what you are missing. She showed Thalvira what it felt like to be held by a mother. The warmth and safety and unconditional love. She showed her what it felt like to laugh until you cried. To share a meal with friends. To watch a sunset and feel your heart swell with beauty. She showed her what it felt like to love someone. To care so much about another person that their happiness became your happiness. Their pain became your pain. Thalvira felt tears on her face for the first time in millennia. Stop, she gasped. Please stop. You call us fragile, Una said softly. You say emotions make us weak. But we feel everything and still choose to keep going. We experience all this pain and still find reasons to smile. She leaned closer, even though their bodies had not moved. You stopped feeling anything at all because you could not handle what it meant to be alive. You cut out your heart to protect yourself. But that is not strength. That is fear. Thalvira's hands trembled in Una's grip. Your people live for thousands of years, Una continued. But you do not truly live. You exist. You observe. You teach. But you never feel. Never love. Never risk your heart. She paused. That is why you will never break us. Because we know something you have forgotten. The pain is worth it. The love, the joy, the connection. It is all worth the suffering. A single moment of true happiness is worth a lifetime of grief. The connection shattered. Una opened her eyes to find Thalvira on her knees, ancient tears streaming down her white face. The joying was over. Una had survived. But more importantly, something else had happened. Something that had not happened in the Galactic Academy. For 3,000 years, a student had not just endured the instructor's mind. She had shown the instructor something new. Una knelt beside Thalvira and did something that shocked them both. She took the old Valanti's hand, not for the examination, but in kindness. I did not come here to defeat you, Una said softly. I came here to learn. Maybe we can learn from each other. Thalvira looked at the offered hand. Such a simple gesture. Such a human gesture. For 3,000 years, she had been alone. Perhaps it was time for that to change. The news spread through the Galactic Academy like fire. The human had survived to joining. Not just survived, she had made Thalvira weep. The ancient instructor who had broken thousands of students across 3 millennia had been moved to tears by a creature who was barely 26 years old No one knew what to think. In the days that followed, Yuna noticed something strange. Students who had ignored her now nodded in respect when she passed. Instructors who had looked at her with pity now looked at her with curiosity. Even the administrators treated her differently. But the biggest change was in Thalvira. The old Valanti did not return to teaching right away. For 3 days, she stayed in her chambers alone. When she finally emerged, something about her was different. She moved more slowly. She looked at students with something other than cold analysis. She looked at them like they were actually people. One evening, Thalvira came to Yuna's room. She stood in the doorway, uncertain, as if she had forgotten how to ask permission to enter. "May I come in?" she asked. Why Yuna moved aside. "Of course." Thalvira entered the small room. She looked around at the tiny space, the narrow bed, the basic desk, the single window. It was nothing like the grand chambers the Valanti occupied. "You live here," she said. "All this time, you have lived in this small room. It is enough, is it?" Thalvira sat down on the only chair. She seemed smaller somehow, less intimidating. "I have chambers that span an entire floor. Centuries of belongings. Art from 1,000 worlds. And yet, it all feels empty now." Thalvira looked at her hands. "After the joining, after what you showed me, I returned to my chambers and saw them for what they really are. Objects. Things. None of them mean anything because I have no one to share them with." Yuna sat on her bed, facing her instructor. "The Valanti chose to remove emotion from your lives. Why? Because it seemed logical. Emotions cause conflict. They lead to war, to suffering, to irrational decisions. We believed that by transcending emotion, we would transcend those problems. And did you?" Thalvira was quiet for a moment. "We stopped fighting wars among ourselves. We became peaceful, logical, efficient. But we also became less. We stopped creating art. We stopped forming families. We stopped living and started simply existing." She looked at Yuna with her black eyes, and for the first time, Yuna saw something human in them. "Your species is young. You have so much pain, so much chaos. But you also have something we lost long ago. You have passion. You have love. You have reasons to wake up each morning beyond simple survival. It comes at a cost," Yuna said. "I know. I felt it through the joining. The grief you carry for your brother, your mother, it is immense. I do not know how you bear it." "Because I love them," Yuna said simply. "The grief is the price of love. And love is worth any price." Thalvira nodded slowly. "That is what I could not understand. Why humans cling to each other so desperately. Why you form connections even knowing they will end in loss. But now I think I see." "What do you see?" "That a short life filled with love is worth more than an eternal life filled with nothing." Thalvira actually smiled. "You taught me that, little human. You taught me something I had forgotten for 3,000 years." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, the alien stars began to appear in the purple sky. "The graduation ceremony is tomorrow," Thalvira said finally. "I know. You will be the first human to complete the program. That is no small thing." Yuna shrugged. "I just did what I came to do. You did far more than that." Thalvira stood up. "You changed things. You changed me. And I do not think either of us understands yet how important that is." She walked to the door, then paused. "Thank you, Yuna, for showing me what I had forgotten. For helping me remember what it means to feel. Then she was gone, leaving Yuna alone with her thoughts. The graduation ceremony was held in the great hall of the academy. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy attended. Diplomats, generals, rulers, and scholars all gathered to see the new graduates of the most prestigious military academy in existence. Yuna stood with her classmates. Only 19 of the original 40 had survived. They represented a dozen different species, each with their own history and traditions. But today, they stood together as equals. The administrator spoke first, giving a long speech about duty and honor and sacrifice. Yuna only half listened. Her mind was on other things. She thought about her brother, who had believed in her when no one else did. She thought about her mother, who had worked so hard to give her this chance. She thought about Earth, waiting millions of light years away, counting on her to prove that humans belonged among the stars. Then Thalvira stepped forward to speak. And everything changed. I have taught at this academy for 3,000 years, the old Volanti said. Her voice carried across the great hall, silencing every conversation. I have trained warriors and scholars from every corner of the galaxy. I have seen empires rise and fall. I believed I knew everything there was to know about strength and weakness. She paused and looked directly at Yuna. I was wrong. A murmur ran through the crowd. The great Thalvira admitting she was wrong? This was unheard of. This year, we had a human in our class, a young woman named Park Yuna, representing the planet Earth. When she arrived, I thought she would break within a week. I thought her species was too emotional, too fragile, too primitive to survive. She smiled. I was wrong about that too. Thalvira walked among the graduates as she spoke, but her eyes kept returning to Yuna. Humans are not like us. They do not live for thousands of years. They do not have perfect logic or telepathic powers. They feel everything deeply: joy and sorrow, love and loss, hope and despair. By our standards, they should be weak. She stopped in front of Yuna. But they are not weak. They are the strongest species I have ever encountered, because they carry all the pain of existence and still choose to keep going. They lose everything and still find reasons to smile. They know that life is short and filled with suffering, and they embrace it anyway. Thalvira turned to address the whole assembly. I have lived for 3,000 years, but I learned more from this one human than from all my years of experience. She taught me that strength is not the absence of emotion, and is feeling everything and refusing to give up. She taught me that connection is not weakness, it is what gives life meaning. She bowed her head slightly toward Yuna. Park Yuna, you have earned your place at this academy. You have earned your place among the stars. And you have earned something more: my respect, my friendship, and my gratitude. The hall was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, applause began. It started with Yuna's classmates, then spread to the instructors, then to the crowd. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy, applauding a single human who had dared to show them a different kind of strength. Yuna felt tears on her face. She did not try to hide them.